I have a question for Jay and Brian, and that question is, what was the adoption process like for you two, and what were all the steps you had to take in order to adopt Daniel and Selena? I think, as we all know, there are hundreds of thousands of kids in the United States who are up for adoption. Um, these kids are waiting, need, and really deserve a chance at life. So for people like me who will be looking into adoption, I don't even know where to start. So I look forward to hearing your story.
Hey YouTube! So this is actually a very important video that me and Brian have been wanting to make for a long time. And we actually argued a little bit today about how to start it, how to make it, how many parts to break it into.
Because it's a really important story for us to tell.
It is an important story. And I think sometimes, you know, our videos, we feel like we're just going on and on and on and on and on. But yet, every time we make a video, we get lots of more questions, which makes us think that maybe we didn't answer the questions correctly. So this is part one of our adoption story. And it's going to be, we're probably going to have about 3 or 4 videos that just talk about, you know, the process of adopting when you're a gay couple. But, you know, it also relates to straight couples. If you're a straight person, this could be pretty helpful to you too if you're considering adoption. And I think this first video is going to be about our conversation as a couple. So, you want to kick off?
Sure. Yeah. When we first got together, you know, way back in the dark ages, you have all kinds of conversations when you're a young couple about what you want your life to be like in the future.
Hopes and dreams.
Yeah. And we both had been pretty clear with each other that one day in the far-flung future, we both wanted to have kids and get married someday.
And if you go back and watch one of our older videos, I think it was How We Met video, we discussed kids and why kids are so important to us as a couple. And what it was about us that we wanted to have kids. So sorry about the interference.
And how we could make that happen, because at that time there was no civil partnership or anything. So it was a pretty big hurdle to jump.
Plus we were in the dark a lot. We had no concept of what it meant to adopt, or you know, how we could go about that, or you know, even if they would let gay people adopt, and we were pretty ignorant.
But one important thing that we did do during that time was we lived our lives as a couple, and we did all those things that we didn't want to look back and regret doing.
We traveled a lot. Went to Italy, we went to England. Where else did we go? We went to Cancun.
All kinds of
places.
places.
We did a lot of traveling, a lot of dancing, a lot of drinking.
Which hasn't stopped now that we got kids, mind you.
Which, please, we don't go
It's just a little harder.
Yeah, it's a lot more work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
try getting through Mexican customs with...
yeah. And try to explain to him that we are both the fathers of our Mexican heritage kids. Not too good. Although, you know what, the scary thing about that is Mexico customs were much easier than Texas customs. For some reason, they didn't like the idea of 2 fathers with 2 little Mexican kids. They didn't care for that too much until I whipped out my sheriff's badge and said, hey, I'm in law enforcement. Do we have a problem here? So it made it a little bit easier getting through customs. But for all you gay families that aren't in law enforcement, I feel very sorry for you.
Boy.
Don't go through Texas. Or Florida.
Yeah, like you got a choice there.
Off topic.
But getting back to the point, yeah, we traveled, we did things, you know, to basically be young and have fun and get all that stuff out of the way, so you don't look back at that later on and go, wow, I really wish I'd done that.
And one more important thing, we made sure, I mean, I knew from the very beginning that this is the person I wanted to spend my life with. I've been infatuated and in love with Brian since the first year I met him. You know, we've been friends and we've been lovers, we've been partners. But I knew, I'd say probably maybe about 7 years into our relationship was when we first started talking about kids and how to make that a reality for us. So I mean, by that time, we've been together for about 7 years when we really knew that this is something we really wanted as a couple. So, okay, off topic again. I'll let Brian narrate and I'll just pop in and out of the video.
But then something amazing happened out of the blue that we weren't expecting. And would you like to explain what it was?
It's about Amira? I had a really good friend named Amira, and I don't think she watched these videos, but if you do, it's all about you, Amira. And she's a wonderful mother. She was a very good friend, and she had gone to her doctor, and she was having, you know, some medical issues. And her doctor had told her, she has 1 daughter already, Jamila, beautiful little girl, love Jamila.
Hi, Jamila.
Hi, Jamila. And her doctor had told her that if she didn't have another child soon, she probably would not be able to have another child because of her some of the chemical imbalances that she was having in her body. So me and Amira were really good friends, and she knew that me and Brian have always wanted kids, and she wanted to have another child. So she approached me and Brian with the idea of having a child with her. And I think that was the first time when me and you really started having conversations about were we ready to be fathers.
Yeah, it's real now. It's going to happen.
So we actually went through that process with Amira, and we made several attempts to have children with her, and it just didn't work out. I mean, I think that her body just wasn't, working with all of us, and I think that her time probably had passed to be a mother. So.
Well, I think it just wasn't meant to be.
It wasn't meant to be.
More than anything.
Yeah.
But it did really start the ball rolling in our minds, really, about the fact that we were ready to be parents. Time still passed after that attempt with Amira before we really revisited the issue again. But one day I think we woke up and realized that we weren't getting any younger. We weren't going to get any more stable or more ready to bring kids into our lives.
So I was probably about, I would say, 35 years old. You were 33 years old, and we sat down and had a real conversation about being parents. And we decided that we were going to make every attempt we possibly could to be dads. And so we thought about the different options: surrogacy, maybe trying with another friend of ours, because we had a few friends talk about it, or adoption. And I think we just felt that adoption would probably be, I don't know, the most responsible, the most...
Because there were already so many kids out there in the world, and when you go through surrogacy, and especially if you consider doing something like that with people who who are friends in your life, there's a lot of emotional baggage that can come with that, and a lot of difficulty. And it works out for some people fine. For us, it just seemed like, why are we going to jump through all those hoops when there are so many kids out there in the world who already need good homes?
Plus, it just seems like, the surrogacy process is a really expensive process. People spend a lot of money to have little kids running around that look like them. I'm not opposed to people who do surrogacy. I just think that it's a lot of money spent creating a child when there's so many kids right now in the world.
And we had talked about it, and we said that it wasn't so important that
the kid was our biological kid.
Biologically related. Yeah.
He's not biologically mine, but I know that the love I have for Brian is more than any love I could possibly create for anything. So I can't imagine, bringing a child into my life that I would love could be any less than a kid that was actually from my DNA. I don't think it'd make much of a difference.
And it hasn't, in practical life it hasn't at all.
So once you get to that decision and you've had the conversation with your partner about are you ready to be committed and have children and raise a family, then you've got to go through the process of finding the correct people that'll work with you in that process.
That is a big job by itself.
And you have to be very careful, because I know many a couple that have gone to the wrong agency, which I'll let Brian tell you about the first agency we went to, but have gone to the wrong agency and pretty much been treated like crap because they were gay or lesbian, and think that that was the end of it, that there is no, that basically, adopting isn't for them because of the way they were treated in an adoption agency. So I'll let you tell you about the first adoption agency we went to.
State adoptions.
In California.
Beware. We sat down at a meeting that they had advertised, actually in a flyer. I forget how we got hold of it, but we went down to this meeting, and there were all these other families sitting around a table, and the person representing the adoption agency did nothing but spin horrible negative stories about what had happened to the kids, what their foster lives are like, what their lives are like when they're placed in their adoptive home.
How hard it is even to adopt kids.
Yeah.
The whole process, how intrusive. It's almost like they were working towards not having people adopt, which really was, it's kind of sad.
They scared the tar out of us. We left there really wondering whether adoption was the right way to go after that. And in talking to other parents through the adoption agency we did end up going with, state adoptions people sometimes ask some really inappropriate questions. They will discriminate against you based on your weight,
your sex,
your age, what kind of sex you have,
whether you're married or old. There's a whole lot of ways to discriminate against people when you're in charge of making really personal, hard decisions. And
there are good state adoptions workers out there. I don't want to just bag on state adoptions because they do a tough job. But there have also been some really awful ones. And the lady that we worked with in Sacramento who represented Daniel and Selena was really wonderful.
Very incredible person.
So it's just a field that's filled with so many different kinds of individuals, and your experience can be really high or really low, and you have to be cautious and have somebody on your side as a parent.
So I would say after that experience, we probably let a year or so pass by, and we thought maybe, okay, well, maybe adoption wasn't the route for us to follow. And then I have a friend at work who is an incredible man, and he's a lieutenant in my department. I'm not going to say his name because Brian said, don't say any names.
We've already given up one name.
Yeah. So,
it's too late.
Well, he's a very incredible person, and he actually has a video or two on YouTube, so I know he's okay with putting his name out there.
Just say it.
Paulson.
Deputy Paulson.
Okay, Paulson. He's Lieutenant Paulson now.
Oh, sorry.
He went through an agency in Oakland, and he adopted 2 little boys that are have a lot of health conditions, and they're African American. Now, I, for some reason, in my head, have always thought that I'm going to have an African American daughter. Our friend Amira was African American, and our daughter would have been mixed. It was actually my DNA that we would have been using with Amira's child if that had happened. And I don't know, something about, I've always had the picture in my head of having an African American daughter. I don't know what that's about.
And just as an aside, that was another conversation that we had to going into this, is not only are we not, it does not such a big deal that the child be biologically related to us, what do we do if our family doesn't get behind us when we have a child who's a different race than us?
Kind of had some issues.
At first, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think they would have had major issues if the kids had been African American.
I don't think so. I think there's always that, getting your toe in the water period.
Yeah, but I think
once you meet Daniel and Selena, all that stuff flies right out the window. And, you never see anything but Daniel and Selena. And I gotta think that kids are kids. You fall in love with them because they are kids.
So we got off track a little bit. I think we also wanted to talk about having the conversation. When we talked about not only surrogacy and adoption, we had to sit down and really talk about, okay, well, how are we going to do this? I mean, who's going to be the stay-at-home dad? Which we decided that, if we were going to adopt children, that I would go to work full-time, and that Brian would be the stay-at-home provider and take care of the kids at home. Because, I mean, obviously for lots of reasons. Some of the reasons because you didn't make as much money.
Yeah, I didn't make, because that was the big one.
Yeah.
I mean, Jay makes more in a single shift than I made in 2 weeks in my retail job.
Well, maybe a week.
And that money has gone a long way towards helping us, especially in times the way they are right now.
Yeah, it's been somewhat tough on one income.
Because he's a better cook, a better homemaker.
But you got to have those conversations when you go into it, because it is a lot harder surviving on one income. I mean, even our family, I mean, we make it month to month sometimes, because Brian has chosen to be a stay-at-home father.
And so do a lot of other families, heterosexual or not. It's just the way things are right now.
But talk about those things before you go into it. Make sure that before you become adoptive parents, that you actually have those conversations. And also, what are you willing to take on? I mean, me and Brian sat down and we thought, okay, well, what are our do's and our don'ts? I always wanted a daughter. Brian always wanted
a son.
So we knew from the very beginning, if I always wanted a daughter and he always wanted a son, maybe we should be looking to adopt 2 kids, a brother-sister team.
Which is better because then, it's easier for them to be friends to each other and help each other through life. And I know that from my own experience with my brother.
It's always nice to have somebody there
who you can just beat the snot out of
and relate to.
Like
They're just like you on a lot of levels. So I think when we went into it, we thought, okay, well, we want a boy and a girl. Okay, so but also, if we were going to get a boy and a girl, we lived in a 2-bedroom house. We needed to sell that house, and we needed to buy a bigger house, which, as you've seen in our videos, that's how we ended up here in the LaFew Mansion. So that's how we ended up with our new home.
Manor.
So, we used to have a cute 1,300 foot bungalow, which was done from top to bottom.
Lots of stuff.
Pre-kids.
Itty bitty space.
Yeah, and it was like, I called it my little jewel box, because every single wall was completely redone. Okay, off topic.
Tangent.
Okay. So another thing that we talked about is me and Brian were very open to kids with medical issues. And that's partially why Daniel came our way. In our profile when we made one, which we're going to talk about later, we had to say what we were comfortable with, what we weren't comfortable with. One thing we were not comfortable with is kids that have been sexually abused. And that's just because being an alternative family, being 2 gay men, I'm not sure that me and you would feel very comfortable dealing with those topics with kids that have been sexually abused by people who love them.
Because one of the conversations we had when you're 2 men, people look at you in a certain way. Yeah. And it's really sad that we even have to have that conversation, but it's true.
But it's nice that, no, I guess I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I think that people get it. You know, if something goes wrong, or if one of the kids acts out sexually or something, they'll look at the dads and say, well, see, it's because they were gay.
Yeah. So that'll be discussed more in a future video. So let's get back on topic.
Right.
So Paulson had adopted these kids through an agency in Oakland that was open to alternative families. And it wasn't a public-run agency. It was a private agency that's completely set up non-for-profit to help people adopt kids. There are so many kids in the systems that sometimes the public agencies do not have the staffing.
And that was, the name of that agency was A Better Way, and they're actually out of Oakland.
And they're also, you can find them on our website where we talk about adoption agencies, and that'll be a good way for you to find an agency in your state, anywhere in the United States that works with gay families. But their agency, Paulson gave me the name to that agency, and I gave them a call, and they said, no, we don't represent your county. We only represent the 4 counties around Oakland. But we know of an agency in Sonoma County that works with gay and lesbian families. And that agency was?
True to Life Children's Services, heretofore referred to as TLC.
Or, as I refer to it, my favorite adoption agency in the whole country, because the people at TLC are incredible. I mean, they walked us through the whole process from the start to the ending, and they are our angels.
Yep.
And
in our upcoming videos, we're going to talk about everything that happened with TLC from
the
the
steps that you have to go through to adopt once you find an adoption agency, the process, the invasiveness of it, the changes in your own life you have to make, and that'll be, I guess, topics of future videos.
What happens when and if you get a child placed with you, all the hoops you have to go through while you wait through the foster process, which California, in order to even be considered for adoption, you also have to be registered as a foster parent, and that's considered FOST-adopt. So basically, they're always trying to reunite children with their birth parents. So that's why kids are placed in the foster system as a temporary fix, or a temporary place for them to be. And if for some reason they cannot go back to their biological parents, then they're still on the track for adoption, and it's just supposed to streamline the whole process.
So as you can see, we have a little a notepad here, and we've written down a lot of different topics we would like to address in the next week on adoption and the process to adopt. So this is video number 1, and I'm sure we're going to be putting 2 or 3 more videos on this week. This will be our adoption week. So we hope you take the time to watch them. We hope you enjoy them.
And we hope you answer all your questions. If you have any more, feel free to send them to us, and they may not make it in these initial videos, but maybe at the end we'll do a question and answer video where we can cover what we didn't cover.
And I hope to inspire you. If you're an adopted child, because we've actually made a few friends on here that are gay and lesbian that were adopted by parents, you know, we'd love to hear your story. We have a good friend who, or I consider him a friend on YouTube now, that has been making some videos, and he made a video about his box. You know, when he came to his family, he came with a box, and we'll talk about that later in another movie, because I think that's very similar to our kids, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, and I'll give you guys the link. So until the next video, which should be in a couple days.
See you later, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube. Take care. Is it okay?
Yeah, that was great.